Thank you for joining us this evening here at SUNY Cortland. As you know, the governor has tried to keep the COVID-19 down in all our communities across the state. And one of the things that we have discovered as of tonight, we have gone over 100 students who have the virus. And as you know, we have to then take a different strategy, and we are going remote as of Wednesday. All our classes will be offered online, and we're asking our students to study in place, and we sent out a document this evening around 5:30, and already I've gotten lots of questions. But I think that really, quite truthfully, most of our students are doing a wonderful job of trying to keep the college as healthy and safe as possible. I'm pleased that our president of our student government is here, and our chief of police, and our mayor, and then the cabinet and other individuals here at the college, all working together so that 2 weeks from now, we are very hopeful that our numbers will come down and we'll be able to reopen. And at this time, I'll be happy to answer questions, but I want to turn it over to the Chancellor, and we're very pleased that he and his staff are here this evening.
Thank you, President Bitterbaum. Thank you, everyone, for joining us. These are always difficult situations to be in, but it's often left up to us as a college community about whether we can stem the tide of these increases or lower. Just a couple of fine-tuned points to add to President Bitterbaum. We have been talking regularly over the course of the weeks. We follow these cases very closely, and we take this very seriously. This is a matter where you see many communities across the state and the nation are not out of the woods. When the highest office holder of the land can contract this, you know that this virus can strike quickly, and it can strike a lot of people. That's why we've been overly aggressive in this battle against COVID, because our ultimate goal is to keep our students, our faculty, and our college communities safe. I want to just mention a couple of points about what Cortland has been doing, which I think is important as context, and then what the pause means, because often people confuse what it is. So I want to be clear with folks, and then I'll be happy to answer any of the easy questions, and then I'll give President Bitterbaum all the difficult questions. First, as President Bitterbaum mentioned, the college is at like 101, I think it's exactly 101 cases tonight. They just met the level tonight. We've been talking, we've been following the numbers very closely. Many of these cases are coming from off-campus students. So these are students who come onto campus, but they live off-campus. The college has been doing surveillance testing, which is an important component of our monitoring of the disease. They also do wastewater testing, which is a signal to indicate where the actual positive case is before we see the individual cases pop up. Where are they coming from? The wastewater results on campus are very, very good. They're extremely low. We don't see much activity. So this is an off-campus issue. Unlike other campuses where gatherings and parties and those things of those nature were driving this, I'm not sure. I think we've talked. There's no clear issue arising from off-campus activity. It's not as if there's one big gathering or two big gatherings, but clearly the activity is coming from off-campus. I thank the chief of police here, Catalano, for all that he's been doing. I'm going to help this effort just to see what's going on off-campus. My chief of police, Frank Lawrence, will be coming to help and work with the local community police as well as our college police here to see if there's some other things that we can do. And I thank Mayor Tobin for being here. He has been a fabulous partner to this college. He has been a fabulous advocate for this college, and his support and cooperation has been instrumental as we continue to open up our campuses, right? This is a really important thing to have the community on board. So we've noticed some cases are up. The trajectory is not where we like it to be. It's going in the wrong direction. But this is why we do the pause, and this is why the state and the governor has required pauses at certain points, so we can try to stabilize the situation. And they've already taken action here. For instance, athletics Greek life has been suspended, and it hasn't been operational for some time. They are doing the testing, they are doing the wastewater testing, so they have all the components in place. That's why you do it, so you can see increases and can you address the increases. This is what it means, though, to be on pause, because I think this often gets confused with folks. There's only 4 requirements for a pause under the state guidance. First, you have to convert all dining to takeout and delivery. That will happen. The president has a plan for that. He's talked to our teams about it. That's the first piece. Second piece, under the state guidance and rules, is you have to suspend in-person athletics, which has already been suspended, extracurricular and non-essential activities. So these activities that are happening on campus right now that you see when you came in tonight are going to have to be paused for 2 weeks. Medical, counseling, all those other types of critical services for students can remain open on campus. That is an important thing that we want to make sure students still have access to, and the law actually allows for that. Classes must be delivered through remote learning. This is the biggest change. So all in-person classes, most in-person classes, will be shifted for online for 2 weeks, except you can continue clinical, lab, licensure, and other research activities working with the local Department of Health. So some of those key on-campus activities can remain. The president will work with the local health department and they'll figure that piece out. They've already been sort of addressing how to get at certain those issues. The fourth piece, which is the most important, which gets at to what this is, it explicitly says in the rules, in the guidance, residential facilities must stay open. This is a pause. This isn't a closure. Students are to remain. Classes will continue in a different way. Food service will continue in a different way. Activities will be more limited, but the school remains open. The point is, can we contain the virus, slow down the virus, and after 2 weeks we make a determination. We just went through this with SUNY Oswego, and that was a highly successful pause. They reversed the trend right now. The linear trend's going the wrong way. It's going up. That's where it's going on right now in Cortland. We want it to go down. We want to see decreases, so we hope that these activities, by this brief pause, will result in just that. And I'm confident and hopeful that with extra work, it can happen. But this is my basic point that I've been saying to college campuses in the SUNY system across the board. And I'm glad Kaylee Humphreys here. Where is Callie? Hello. The students are the most important piece that we often forget about all this. The students are happy to be back on campus. The students are happy to be participating in campus life, even in this unusual situation. We all have to then redouble our efforts to do everything we can to control the virus. And you can see how quickly just a handful of people can turn the entire situation on its head, where you can have cases going up instead of going down, instead of being stabilized. I am proud of the entire SUNY college community, 64 campuses all across the state of New York. Right now, we performed more than 140,000 tests since the beginning of the semester. Our positivity rate is 0.7. That is remarkable. No one said that a big system like this could do that. We can do it, but there are times where we have to be extra vigilant and be extra cautious and take extra concern for one another. So this is one of those moments here that we're going to do at Cortland. And we work together as a college community. That's why I wanted to come tonight. I thought it was important to say, we're one SUNY family, we're one SUNY community, we all have to work together. I will do whatever I can to help this college, because this is an important institution. President Bitterbaum will do everything he can, but we all have to participate in the bargain as well. So the community is going to work with us, we're going to work with the community, and then our students all have to work together and say, we have to redouble our efforts. Off-campus behavior clearly has to change. That's what's driving our cases. It may not be one party or two parties, but there's enough activity going on where we have to rethink about how we're dealing with our off-campus life in a new way, so this college can remain open for everyone, because I want your new student governance body who just got elected to be working here, participating with their student body, not remotely. So we hope this is a pause, but there's a hope right now. There's a lot of work to do. I'm hopeful that if we work together here as a college community, and I know President Bitterbaum has been running this really important institution for a long time, I'm confident in his leadership to get it done. We all have to join together and make sure we lower this overall thing. So it's a pause tonight, it's not a closure. We're gonna follow the guidance, we're gonna be extra cautious. We were talking about this even before we got to 100, because this is not waiting till 100. This is doing the right thing beforehand. And then hopefully, in 2 weeks, working with the local health department, working with the college, we can see where we are then. So, thank you.
All right, we can start questions now.
President Bitterbaum, plan on going remote Wednesday. Will there be classes at all tomorrow? Or what's the plan for Tuesday?
Yeah, there is classes tomorrow.
SUNY recently published a list of punishments, 64 of them, based on how students behave or lack of behavior with COVID-19. Have you had to...
Misbehavior.
Misbehavior, that's the word I'm looking for. Have you had to apply that to any students here?
We do. We have student conduct, and we actually have had students that have interim suspensions. We've dismissed students from the college. We have constantly communicated with them what our expectations are, and I do appreciate that the Chancellor wrote a very powerful message to all 64 campuses that we shared. We actually broke it down into a series of messages. It's just the age group, it makes it difficult at times to convince what they have to follow. Though I think since we started testing a few weeks ago, we're doing 1,000 a week. We'll do even more next week. I think they're finally getting the message, and now by having to go remote, I really do think that students will really understand what's happening.
Can you give us a ballpark of how many students have been disciplined and if they were on or off campus?
The vast majority have been off campus. I feel uncomfortable because some of that's confidential, but it's less than 100.
All right, next question.
What impact will this spike in cases and closure of the campus have on the rest of the Cortland community, being that most of them were off campus?
Right. Well, it's an interesting question. What I will share with you that we're asking our off-campus students to also study in place, to not have their movements. We do realize that they do have a lot of freedom. If they do go to a restaurant in town, we ask that it be grab and go, but not to stay. And we ourselves will ask our own college police and others just to remind students constantly. If we learn of misbehavior, we will come down hard because they're jeopardizing it for everyone. We're close to 7,000 students, and to have a handful of students ruin the opportunity is disappointing.
But I want to be just clear on this point because it's important, because the community are important to us and we're important to the community because we are the community, whether we're in Cortland or Oswego or Albany or Stony Brook, it doesn't matter. We're integrated into these communities. Students are adults. Students who had come into contact or have the virus themselves, that's why you do testing. You try to find out what's going on in your college community. They're doing testing here. That's how we know the test results that we have today.
Do faculty and...
Well, hold on, I'm not done. You gotta let me finish.
Sorry about that.
Come on. You must isolate as a student, even if you're off campus, if you come into close contact, or if you have the virus. That's not a college requirement. That's a state of New York health requirement. That is an order of the Department of Health. That's a serious matter. If you violate that, you're violating the terms of a health order. We wanted to make sure that we were crystal clear, though, and that's why I put out a uniform set of compliance to show that there are consequences to people who do not follow actions. Violating an isolation order when you have the virus is a serious matter to me. You may not feel the impacts of the virus, you may not become sick, but you could infect someone else who could become sick. And for people who say, oh, that's not a possibility. How many more stories of doctors in Texas who are only 28 years old have to die before you say this isn't serious? They're adults, so there are consequences for that. So the community, I want the community to know, feel confident that we put the provisions in place to make sure, we want to make sure our students are doing the right thing. Most of them are doing the right thing is the key. For those who aren't, there are serious consequences. We've increased the penalties in those cases. There are serious actions, not just violating public health order. You could be suspended. You could lose eligibility for athletics. Your organizations could lose their status on campus. Those are significant issues. And then we're gonna work on compliance and see what's going on. That's why my police chief is gonna work with the campus police chief and work with the community as one organization, as one unit, to make sure that everyone's compliant. So people should feel confident and safe that we have a plan and that there's not gonna be chaos. There's a plan here. Remote learning, more restrictions to calm the virus.
Tim, since you mentioned community, I'd make several other observations. So we have a philosophy here at Cortland, and it's called stewardship of place, that we have an obligation to enhance our community. And you will know this quite well, having been a student here. In a typical semester, we will have close to 2,000 students working in the community in service learning, internships, Big Brother, Big Sister, Catholic Charities, you name it. They're all going to have to pause. That is going to have a tremendous impact on the Ys and WCA and MC, et cetera. It's also, when you think of the number of our students economically and what they bring to this community, we are the largest employer. And so by, employees may lose their jobs because our students will not be able to go into the community in the near future. So it has real ramifications for this community. But the community also does a lot for us in hosting our students, the internships, the service learning, really critical for a place like Cortland. In many cases, they'll hire our students if it's a national or even a state organization. So we take stewardship of place very, very seriously.
President or Chancellor, I don't know which one of you can comment on this. You mentioned you can't pinpoint these to one or two off-campus parties. What is it that's happening? Off-campus, is it a bunch of little parties? What are you guys experiencing?
We're not actually positive that it's parties. It is gatherings. And what we do know is we have the addresses of about a little over 20 houses. Early on, we did know of some Greek life that several of them had it, and so we had to quarantine the whole house. So it could be 24 people behave themselves, and one individual doesn't, and look what happens. And so we're thinking of new strategies and trying to educate our students that they have to be absolutely diligent and talk to each other. Where are you going? What are you doing? Look how you're going to jeopardize where we all live, off campus.
You mentioned that it's mostly off campus. What are you experiencing on campus that's seeing that number?
Well, it's interesting. I can share with you, we are very proud of how our students are acting on campus. They're following guidelines. There are always exceptions, but by and large, people were mentioning to me when they drove in tonight, students were wearing their masks. They were distancing themselves. They're taking it very seriously. But so I'm proud of what's happening on campus. I do have concerns about off campus.
Next question.
President, Chancellor, most of your restrictions are keeping people from circulating on campus, remote learning, grab and go meals. What are you doing specifically to prevent them from circulating once they step off the campus?
Well, I'll mention my piece. I think President Bitterbaum mentioned some of the strategies that they'll be implementing. Students not doing volunteer work or other not-for-profit work in the meantime. I think they're encouraging them to not participate in indoor dining and things like that. I think one of the things we have to figure out is, and I think that's why we have to have our respective law enforcement organizations work together, is there one thing happening? Is there multiple things that we have to figure out off campus? I think President Bitterbaum's point was, it seems like you have many large housing units here, right? So you have one house with 25 people in it, one person violates the rule, next thing you know, this virus doesn't discriminate. You have 23 other people in the house, there you go, there's your problem. So I think we have to look at those things very carefully now. Sometimes when a pause like this happens, it stops the spread because there's less interaction among different groups, even from off campus coming on campus, right? Many of the students considered off campus, they're still considered part of the campus community, and they count in our numbers if they come onto campus for courses and other things. So by limiting that exposure points, we hope we can get the virus down. But you can't get the virus down temporarily for 2 weeks and not address the root cause, so we're going to look at both of those things closely over the next 2 weeks to make sure you can stop that in perpetuity going forward. But I'll let President Bitterbaum speak.
No, the Chancellor is absolutely correct. In essence, we have to inspire our off-campus students to behave and to realize that they're jeopardizing their opportunities as well as everyone on campus. So for a student who has a magnificent internship, I already received an email this evening, can I go to my internship? No, you can't. For the next 2 weeks, you will not get to do this marvelous thing that you were doing. So there was a letter we sent out to our community, and it has a whole laundry list of our expectations of our students. But the Chancellor is absolutely correct. If we can have them study in place, behave themselves, realize that what they're jeopardizing, I think we will get this under control. But the root cause is just people mingling inappropriately.
Now, Oswego, as an example, can you tell me where was it spreading from Oswego, and how did they address it that they were able to reopen in 2 weeks?
So I think I've been to 25 campuses in about 3 weeks on the job. Some campuses multiple times. I've been to Oswego 4 times now. And I mentioned bringing my kayak because they're on a beautiful lake. But unfortunately, I didn't get the kayak because we were dealing with this issue. But now I'm confident that they're open, I can go kayak eventually. What you saw there was, this just shows you how the virus can move. They pre-tested everyone, 6,500 or so students. Very low positivity rate. The infections came after they were in the community. It was mostly off campus, and these were parties. These were parties. That's what they found to be the source. So one large party can then become a bigger problem because they leave that party, they go back to their apartment or house off campus, they go back onto their campus, into a dormitory, and there you go. That's the spread. They increased compliance through enforcement. They worked with the local mayor as well as the police department, and they did joint compliance to make sure they were cutting back on the gathering sizes, on the parties, and seriousness. Then there were other issues of sometimes even that didn't get through to people. I became COVID positive, I was isolated, I was violating my isolation order. To me, is an unforgivable sin because you can actually impact people's lives. They increased compliance there. So that became a really important joint community effort. I'm confident if some of those issues emerge here as well. The mayor has been fantastic, working with the president and his administration. Those efforts will have to be redoubled, and that's how you address those issues. But that was the Oswego issue.
All right, last questions? Anyone? All right, thank you very much.
Thank you.
Well, thank you all for coming. We hope to see you in a few weeks where we can share some good news.
Absolutely. Thank you.